Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to bring you the next installment of our WrestleMania review series, this time working on WrestleMania 31, which took place at Levi's Stadium in San Francisco, California on March 29th, 2015, with the announced attendance of 76,976. Per usual, we'll go through every single match and give you our kind of feelings and ratings on each and every one. And then, of course, go through the entire event as a whole and let you know what we're thinking. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first contest of WrestleMania 31, which was a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. This featured the likes of Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Stardust, Luke Harper, R-Truth, Dean Ambrose, and Bad News Barrett. KP, thoughts on the opening contest? It feels like with this one, they kind of just put it in the slot that used to be Money in the Bank. Similar concept, I guess, but this time it's for the Intercontinental Championship instead of Money in the Bank. Curious to hear your thoughts on how this one went as far as an opening contest and just as a match overall.
Yeah, I think we're pretty critical a lot of the time when it comes to opening matches at WrestleMania because, it's a good way to kick things off if it's a really good matchup and it just sets the tone for the course of the night. And honestly, I think they sort of nailed that on the head for this WrestleMania because this ladder match was a lot of fun. It was really, really enjoyable to watch. It was a fantastic way to kick things off. And yeah, it just had a lot going on and I just really enjoyed it. There was some really crazy fun spots throughout the matchup, kind of a couple of iconic moments as well. And it just had a really great flow to it. Like you couldn't really keep your eyes off of it because there was so much going on all the time. It was just sort of like really fast paced and very energetic. Quite chaotic, like I mentioned. We do see a couple of nice spots throughout the contest. One of which being Wade Barrett suplexing Stardust off of a ladder. They got a really big reaction from the crowd. As well as Luke Harper powerbombing Dean Ambrose through a ladder that was set up at ringside against the barricade. That was crazy. That was a really nice spot. And again, got like a really, really good reaction. Towards the end of the contest, we see Wade Barrett hitting bullhammer after bullhammer after bullhammer. I think it was like 3 men got nailed down by the series of bullhammers. The Intercontinental Champion looked quite strong in the closing stages. It's just some really nice sells throughout the matchup as well. From like Dolph Ziggler especially, he got absolutely slammed on his back. Just the way that he was selling stuff was great. Just everyone seemed to just blend really well together in this one, to be honest with you. It's served for a really fun match to start off the show. Don't think anyone really shied away. I think everyone was sort of involved in parts here and their sort of thing, and everyone had their sort of moment to shine and be showcased, which is good. We see Daniel Bryan picking up the victory here, becoming the brand new Intercontinental Champion at the end of this one. He sort of gets into a headbutt battle with Dolph Ziggler on top of the ladder, and I think it's I can't remember which. I think it might have been Jerry Lawler said you can't win a headbutt battle with a goat. And it was actually the GOAT in this instance, Daniel Bryan, who would win that one and grab the Intercontinental Championship as his prize afterwards. So yeah, it was really, really fun. I love this one. The crowd were absolutely hot from the start. They were really interested, invested, keen, and just loving the contest. Generally speaking, there was a lot of a lot of hype going through with this, and just made for a really, really fun, great contest to start off WrestleMania. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so much fun. So yeah, more of the same, going forward. This is great. This is what a WrestleMania match should be to start off with. Something like this, just to really sort of like A, showcase loads of people, which works. B, sort of like just go crazy and, have a lot of fun with the matchup. And C, make for a moment. I mean, we ended the previous year with the WrestleMania, and now you're starting with the WrestleMania. It was well met by the fans, and they had a great time watching Bryan win that championship. So all around, good with me. What about you, Nick? What did you make of this opening contest, this ladder match?
Yeah, Wade Barrett looked pretty good. I feel like I didn't get to see him quite a bit on the main roster. I'm not sure if it's just because his stint was so short or I don't quite remember, but he looked really good here. And kind of what I was mentioning earlier was it just kind of feels like it took the slot of what we used to have the Money in the Bank ladder matches when they were not their own PLE yet. So of course it's going to work, and the spots were pretty brutal in parts, especially the power bomb from Luke Harper. That was brutal spot. Just anything with ladders always tends to work. Good way to get the crowd into it, as you kind of alluded to. And the last 2 WrestleMania matches we've seen have Daniel Bryan winning a title, so that also kind of helps liven the crowd up a bit. And as you mentioned, we're pretty hot for everything in general to start off here. So yeah, no issues with me. Just a ton of fun, lots and lots of spots, and yeah, everyone looked pretty good here too, especially Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan. So yeah, for me, I give it a rating of a 9 out of 10. Yeah, just you just can't go wrong with a ladder match to kick off Mania. With that, let's go ahead and get into the second match of the night, which has Seth Rollins with J&J Security as Mr. Money in the Bank going up against Randy Orton.
I don't know. I look back on this one, I always remember this matchup being like really early in the night, and I think when the ladder match kicked things off, I was surprised because I was like, I swear Randy and Seth were in action. But yeah, second match of the night. You're sort of like testing my memory here with this one, but looking back on it, it's a really good match. I genuinely think that it's quite slept on, to be fair, just for how important this one is in setting up a little bit of stuff later on in the show, as well as going forward after this WrestleMania. I remember what happens after this quite well from watching back back when. And yeah, this one just had a really nice flow to it. I think just both men just sort of were able to bring out a nice side of each other. It was very competitive, very back and forth. We see J&J Security, aligned with Seth Rollins here, sort of like getting involved here in bits than there. And Randy Orton looking very strong by dealing with them on on each occasion they do try and interfere. And yeah, he just sort of like brushes them aside essentially, hitting a hangman DDT on the apron, as well as a couple of RKOs on them when they do get involved at a later stage in the contest. But yeah, this one had a nice vibe to it. We see sort of like that competitiveness between the two of them, and we see that sort of that personal sort of feeling between them. The rivalry's quite quite hard hitting in parts, and we get to a stage where they actually both kick out of each other's finishers, which makes for some really cool spots. Like the crowd are really invested, really high on that. At that point, they're very much into the matchup, and yeah, those kickouts are quite nice, and they make for some big moments in the matchup as well. Like I said, Randy looked really, really strong, and he was strong towards the end of the contest, especially because once Seth hits his stomp and Randy kicks out of it, Seth basically, is not really too sure how to get the victory here, and sort of like tries to figure something out. Obviously, the architect, is very much a staple of his career going forward, even from this point and before it. And yeah, he gets into a position where he looks for his second stomp of the match, but Randy Orton manages to spring Seth Rollins upwards, and I'm sure everybody, has seen this RKO, countless times. But it is probably the most iconic RKO, probably one of the best counters, and just, finishes to a match, one of the best that we've probably seen up until this point on the WrestleMania stage. And it's just an absolutely incredible RKO and an unbelievable finish as well. Just the way it all worked together, it looked smooth as butter. Like there was nothing wrong with it, and it just worked. And the crowd popped massively for it too. So yeah, really great finish to the matchup once Randy hits that RKO and gets the pin literally seconds later. But you could tell he was absolutely gassed once he hit that RKO because of the way he was sort of like pumping himself up after he hit it, and then does eventually go for that cover. So yeah, it's just a really good match. It's solid. Is there anything special about it? I'd say maybe the finish was really, really good, but in terms of like have that special feel to the matchup, maybe not quite as like the levels that you might see in like a main event or whatever in past WrestleManias, but it was a really solid one-on-one matchup between these two guys that had a really good finish, quite unique, and had a few layers to the matchup as well throughout. So yeah, I thought it was worth. I really liked it. I gave it an 8 out of 10, so I thought it was pretty good. And just showcased both men really, really well. And yeah, we just sort of like see this this feud carry on after this WrestleMania for other reasons. But yeah, it was really good. I liked it. So what did you think, Nick? This obviously one-on-one matchup. Someone like Randy Orton, not someone you're massively sort of well, you don't tend to enjoy too much, but yeah, what do you think of this one against Seth?
Yeah, funny enough, I actually have something about that in my notes about my kind of viewings towards Randy Orton. And it feels like a lot of my not hatred, but displeasure towards his matches kind of stem from the beginning of his career, where it seems like the last few times I've seen him at Mania, it slowly kind of starts to get a little better. So maybe his newer style, it doesn't, I enjoy them more than I did his original, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, this was an exception as well, where I feel like I genuinely did enjoy the match. Obviously, it helps to be in the ring with someone like of Seth Rollins. But yeah, this is a pretty entertaining contest. And I think, like I said, it seemed to be a switch now where, the last couple matches of Randy I really enjoyed, and yeah, just the general flow of this went well. Chemistry between the two guys went well. J&J Security was there enough, but not too much where it felt like they were taking over the match. So I was good with that as well. And it generally feels like this match and the main event match feel like they took place quite long apart in terms of time, but for whatever reason, maybe get into that a little more later. But yeah, just generally a good match. Nothing super crazy, but it was good considering coming off the red hot start. This was a pretty good second match to follow up. I think I'd be hard pressed to find. It didn't obviously go look at the previous 30 manias, but it does feel like this was kind of a pretty quality start to Mania in terms of like a 1-2 punch. And as you already alluded to as well, one of the coolest, if not the coolest, RKOs. I think, I would love to know how many times they practiced that one, but regardless, this RKO was one for the record books, absolutely. In terms of rating, I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Like I said, just generally a quality contest and a nice way to kick off WrestleMania 31 with those two matches. And so, getting into the third match of the evening, we have probably one of the most, if not the most controversial one of WrestleMania 31. That is Triple H going up against Sting, the franchise versus the Icon, the baseball bat versus the sledgehammer, in a match that most people assumed we would never ever see. Um, yeah, very, very interesting contest here. KP, what did you make of it?
Well, I don't know if I'm in the minority here with this opinion, but I quite liked it. I thought it was pretty good and honestly quite fun as well. Was it a bit of a spot fest? Maybe in parts, I think is fair to say. But I liked it. I thought it was just a fun match. We see obviously Sting and Triple H going at it, and obviously it eventually turns up into a battle of factions, I guess you could say, with Degeneration X and the New World Order being involved. I don't know. I thought the crowd were eating it up the whole way through. They were loud from start to finish. There's a bit of a moment at the start of the match where Triple H and Sting are sort of like staring each other down. They're sort of like taking in the crowd and everything, the setting, the moment. And it just sort of like has that quite dramatic feel to it for a very large part. And that's obviously before, we get both factions coming on down to have their say and, be involved in some ways here and there. But there were some really big kickouts, going towards those late stages as well. It's made for some really tense moments, heightening the drama as well, getting some reactions from the crowd. And that match, it just had a big fight feel to it as well. It almost felt like it was larger than life at some times, just with everything that was going on, all the layers that were involved. And the collision between DX and the NWO, I don't know, it just felt pretty good, like pretty big. I think they didn't get involved too much to take the focus off of Triple H and Sting. I think there was still a large part that was, emphasized on the two of them. Although there were, 7 men around ringside at one point, including Shawn Michaels towards the late stages. But yeah, it did almost feel like there was like a war ending, joke intended, or maybe not there. But that, it did have that vibe towards those late moments of this matchup. But we do see in the end Triple H picking up the victory in this one. Yeah, maybe controversial. I think it's fair to say that I think people, would have preferred it if Sting had won this matchup, and I'm probably on that side of the coin as well, to be fair. But on the back of that, how we get to that point, it's it's quite a funny bit. There's it's sort of like a stare down between Triple H and Sting, and the factions are sort of like gathered around the outside. Triple H gets given his sledgehammer. Sting gets given his baseball bat, and it gets to a point where Sting actually, strikes the sledgehammer, the handle of it, with the baseball bat, and it absolutely cuts clean in half off of the handle. No shards anywhere, just an absolutely rounded, clean cut. And I found that quite amusing, to be fair. That's maybe the one thing in this matchup that I think maybe was done quite poorly, I suppose. They could have made it look a little bit more realistic. But regarding, besides that, though, we do see a little bit of a battle between the two men afterwards, and there's a bit of a coming together. And eventually Triple H does grab that sledgehammer that's been broken in half, and he does whack it against the face of Sting, and almost maybe a little bit anticlimactic, gets a 1, 2, 3. Maybe a little bit deflated of the crowd once that 3 went down. But just generally up until that point, I liked it. I thought it was good. We see a bit of a post-match situation where there's a stare down between everybody, really. Triple H offers a hand in respect towards Sting, who then accepts it. And yeah, I guess then it's all's well that ends well in this whole situation. But yeah, I don't know. I've already gone through why I liked it so much, and obviously the different layers involved. I just thought it worked. I guess you could argue that the finish was maybe a little bit flat, and yeah, the winner could have been different. But besides that, I thought it was fun. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, just felt really big, had that larger than life feel at times, and yeah, had a pretty decent flow. I don't know. I just liked all the elements that went into making it what it was. It made it feel a bit bigger, to be fair, even though it was pretty big at the time anyway. So one of those things. Nick, what did you make of this one in terms of yeah, maybe the controversial side of things? I can understand why people would think that. I definitely agree with it in parts as well. But was it a bit of a spot fest for you, or do you think it was actually something that worked together quite nicely?
Yeah, and I wanted to take a moment to mention Triple H's entrance here, rocking the Terminator entrance, because I don't think, along with the Arnold Schwarzenegger cameo, I don't think anyone across the WrestleMania has a better just overall entrance, compilation to his name than Triple H. Always seems to go above and beyond. But yeah, there's some questionable things here. I think obviously the biggest one being Triple H winning. Apparently, there are reports that Hogan and Scott Hall were absolutely flabbergasted when going through this in the rehearsals. Then when Triple H said he was going to win, they couldn't quite believe that. Obviously, Sting was here to the company for the first time and thinking that they would probably give him the win to kind of give him some momentum. But Triple H said, "Nope, not on my watch." And the either rivalry or the bad blood maybe continuing, and maybe it was more of a Vince call. Who knows? Um, Regardless, to think that while Vince was there, that WCW was going to get one over on WWE. Like I said, not on his watch. So yeah, so to balance the scales, it was a cool moment, between the NWO and DX. Just on this face, you would think, well, DX would never beat NWO. At least that's what you would think in your head. But yeah, interesting bit. Yeah, I thought that bit where Sting breaks the sledgehammer, I thought that was a cool moment. Um, yeah, the camera angle for that was pretty interesting. But yeah, maybe 10 years too late ish at least. And so sitting here thinking what could have been, but regardless for what it was, I thought it was a cool moment. A good match, no. But a cool moment, absolutely. The stand up in the ring was a cool moment as well, just between all the big names here. So overall, I give it a rating of 6 out of 10. I don't know. I really struggled with that rating. Felt like it was generous. Felt like I was being too critical. But for the moment, that we got, I thought it was absolutely iconic. Like I said, just maybe a bit too late in the careers of a lot of these people. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next match, which has Paige, the first 90s born wrestler at WrestleMania, and AJ Lee going against the Bella twins, Brie and Nikki Bella. KP, we were always critical on these women in WrestleMania stage, and I think rightfully so because we know what they're capable of now. Do you feel like this is kind of a leap into what we currently see from them, or are we not quite there yet? Basically, what did you make of this contest?
I think with women's wrestling, at WrestleMania, it gets to a stage where eventually we do sort of make that leap and that step up into the much better contests. I think we're on the way with this one. So we've already had a couple of matches in the past where we've been like, oh, right, well, this is a turning point, for women's wrestling at Mania. And then obviously, a year later, it's like, okay, well, we're going to go back down to nothing, or then maybe not even on the card or something like that. So I think with this one, obviously being a tag team matchup, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but maybe this is the best women's tag match at Mania up until this point. I think if the ones that I can remember off the top of my head have been quite poor in comparison. So, not to say this one was an all-time classic, but I think it was a step up in the right direction for women's tag team wrestling. And it allowed for a story to be told here in this matchup. A story that was basically built around the Bellas trying to keep AJ Lee from being involved in this match. And it was quite well sort of done here by, well, I guess by both of them, Nikki the Diva Champion and Brie Bella the the sister of Nikki, just sort of like coming to her aid here for a large part of it. They sort of had a really good sort of blend together here that just really kept AJ Lee from the matchup. A lot of times, Paige was getting absolutely beat down, and there'd be a spot where they basically just attack AJ Lee, sort of like a blind, cheap attack, whatever, and send her to ringside. She spent a lot of time on the floor on the outside of the ring here in this contest, and it was quite progressive. The strategy was there, and the isolation worked against Paige, who did, suffer quite a lot of punishment throughout this matchup. But she did kick out of a rack attack, to be fair to Paige, so she did have her specific moment here, I guess you could say, in this matchup, proving that she wasn't going to sort of like take the beating lying down. She was going to keep on fighting to get AJ Lee in the matchup, and eventually that does happen. She gets into the contest and sort of brings the fight to the Bellas. More so Nikki in the end. We do see a little bit of a situation where she locks in the Black Widow. And this is quite funny because Paige on the outside, she's been absolutely battered by both Bella twins throughout this contest. And Paige slams Brie Bella, like properly launches her into the steel steps, puts her out of commission for the rest of the contest. That AJ Black Widow gets locked in immediately afterwards. And we see Nikki Bella struggling, and AJ Lee taps out the Diva Champion on the WrestleMania stage. So yeah, it was a really good sort of like a way of like telling that story type thing between these four women. Allow them to all to have like a WrestleMania moment together, and I think it's kind of that turning point a little bit. Obviously, it's not quite there. The women's evolution doesn't start until a bit after this, but we're on the right track, and we're getting that sort of that spotlight being shined a little bit more on them as we're going along, which is quite good. And these are the women that are sort of like a large part of it. I think mainly two of these four women, especially. But yeah, it was good. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I liked the match for what it was. I thought it had elements to it. It told a decent story, and it shone them in a better light, which is good. And there was some decent stuff in this one. It was not the worst women's match we'll see at WrestleMania. That is absolutely a certainty. What did you reckon here, Nick? It's a step up in the right direction. We see a decent tag match between the women's division, and the Diva Champion was involved. So I guess a few things checked off the list.
Far from the worst matchup we've seen, but I feel like we've been saying that for like you kind of alluded to, we have a match here and there where we feel like we're kind of stepping up our women's presence. But again, this is the only match of the evening, so probably come off as a broken record a bit. But yeah, definitely not the worst match. Would I call it a classic? Absolutely not. But it was a well put together match. Everyone looked good. Bit on the shorter side. As you mentioned, Paige took an absolute beating. It's clear who they had the most faith in. But it wasn't a bad match. It just wasn't a great match either. I just call it kind of in the middle. I call it a good enough match. Is kind of where I put it here. Yeah, it was good, just not quite what we're used to yet, but definitely a step in the right direction. So with all that, a good enough tag match for me. Give it a 6 out of 10. Really struggled with that rating as well. Felt like I was being too critical, and sometimes I felt like I was being too generous. So 6, kind of putting it where I feel like a good spot for it. With that, we're getting into the next match, which has John Cena going up against Rusev with Lana for the United States Championship, which is being defended for the first time in 8 years on the WrestleMania stage. KP, taking things back to basics here, the good guys versus the foreigner, tale as old as time, as you will, one that Vince McMahon absolutely loves. A simple idea, but does it work on this particular occasion?
In the grand scheme of things, yeah, I would say it worked for sure. It's possibly maybe a little controversial as well, with Rusev being undefeated going into this one, and obviously meeting someone like John Cena, who on the WrestleMania stage has a lot of victories. So you could probably see what was written in the stars going into this one here, really, or how it was all going to work out. And the match itself lived up to basically what everyone thought it would have been. It was pretty physical, hard hitting. Despite losing, Rusev looked pretty good, to be fair, and was in control of this one for a large part of the contest, sort of wearing down John Cena. There was a lot of sort of like throwbacks to their match at Fastlane, which happened previously in the year. That was mentioned on commentary throughout the course of the matchup as well. Lana was involved, being a little bit of a menace at times, especially one point I found absolutely hilarious. I think there's a submission from John Cena, I think it's the STF on Rusev, and Lana doesn't really know what to do. She just takes a stiletto off and just throws it into the ring. Doesn't actually connect with anybody, I don't think. It just sort of like somehow goes in between the referee and both men. And Cena obviously sees it, and once the STF is locked, is broken free, we then see Cena sort of like questioning why Lana threw her stiletto into the ring. So yeah, a bit of a weird one, that one. But yeah, it just made for an amusing moment. I had to bring it up, to be fair. But her presence at ringside was felt in moments here and there throughout this matchup, and especially towards the finish as well. She was a very pivotal part of it because Cena breaks out of the accolade, which apparently was the first time that had been done by a superstar up until this point. No one had ever broken out of it before. So quite the impressive accomplishment there from Cena. And sort of has a bit of back and forth with Rusev immediately afterwards. Before then, he sort of slams Rusev into the turnbuckles. Rusev does look to get back on the offensive, though, and Cena ends up just knocking him down again before Lana gets on the apron, and then Cena avoids a charging Rusev, who inadvertently knocks Lana to ringside. Obviously, that's her sort of way of being involved in the finish there. John Cena literally sees the coming together on the apron, hits an attitude adjustment onto Rusev, and that'll be enough to win the United States Championship by pinning the undefeated at the time, Rusev. So yeah, it was obviously it was the end of the undefeated streak for Rusev, and from then on it was I don't think he really ever really got back up to those heights. There were moments where he showed promise to do that, but yeah, it was a bit of a shame really that he didn't really hit that sort of big streak again, which I think, he obviously showed signs of quality before that. So yeah, it's one of those things. By the way, regarding this one, Cena with the win. I like the match for what it was. It wasn't a fantastic contest or anything like that, but it was good, it was decent, it was solid sort of thing. I gave it a 7.5. Nothing truly special, but not bad by any means necessary either. Made for a moment, and the entrance from Rusev as well on the tank, iconic as hell. What a great entrance. Yeah, Nick, what did you make of this one? Cena against Rusev, US title, changing hands, and yeah, I guess the introduction to Rusev on the WrestleMania stage, but his undefeated streak goes along with him.
Yeah, we talk about Triple H winning matches that he shouldn't. Probably another one for Cena in that similar bucket, winning a match that he shouldn't. I feel like that's absolutely the case here. The crowd, even though Rusev is obviously the heel, the crowd, not 100% behind Cena. I don't think they really ever have been, maybe until the latter parts of his career. But yeah, Rusev is a popular figure here to say the least. And always, held a special place in my heart. This character is so simple, and he just feels like he does it so well. It's so effective. His in-ring work is quite clean here. Yeah, it feels like you could have had a star born here just to beat Cena. Instead, they went the other way around because, of course, the Golden Boy of WWE is not going to lose to a foreign heel. That's just not Vince's way, unfortunately. But you could have had that done here. Um, yeah, it's the match itself is good. The shoe bit was hilarious. Yeah, Cena kind of goes to the ref like, "Where did this shoe come from?" Or where. Thought that was hilarious. Not sure where Lana was actually aiming for, but regardless, that's what we got. Um, yeah, the match itself was good. Just felt like you had a chance to kind of build a star here, as you alluded to. Maybe arguably, never quite got that momentum back, at least in the heel, the foreigner, role that we, know I've come to know, and whether you love it or hate it, it's effective. So for whatever reason, they didn't decide to go with Rusev here, and yeah, they said break a couple of streaks here. It's unfortunate, and honestly, I feel like does take away a bit from the match. Just because it seems like it's so clear cut that you have a chance to build a star there, similar to last year's Bray Wyatt match. Kind of the same tune I'm singing here. You have a chance to build a new star, and instead you just kind of go with Old Faithful, if you will. Go with what you know. Go with what's familiar. It is a bit frustrating to say the least. But regardless, taking my personal feelings aside, it was a good match. Gave this a rating of a 7 out of 10. Just kind of frustrating again because what could have been. So with that, Before we get into the next segment, just wanted to quickly put out there that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon going up against The Rock and Ronda Rousey, at least the segment there. That's 3 years before Ronda Rousey's debut. So it is on the horizon. A pretty cool match. The Rock had to reach out to Dana White to make sure that he could use her on the Mania stage. So just a pretty cool moment in itself. Along with this next match, KP, if you want to hit on that, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I just thought that was kind of a cool moment. And just a fun fact, the longest segment match of the night at 24 minutes. No other match was longer than 20 minutes, and the main event was supposed to be, but got cut short because this segment here went over. Go figure, the Rock segment went over. News you come quite familiar with. But getting into the actual next match, we have Bray Wyatt going up against The Undertaker, who's making his return from WrestleMania 30, now sitting at 21-1. KP, thoughts on this one? I think this is I have some more thoughts kind of similarly in a similar light to the one of the last match, where I feel like you had a chance to kind of do something more special here. Last, it didn't quite do it, but just on its face, what'd you make of this one?
Yeah, this one was interesting. Really, really interesting and intriguing for me. I thought it was pretty solid, to be fair. It's one of those unique matches that I think you get two really unique characters, you put them together, and you make sort of something that's really just fascinating to watch. And that seems to be what we got here from this one as well. That's what I took from it anyway. Because both characters worked really well together. They mixed in a way that was just quite compelling, in my opinion. And it made for a really cool dynamic. The back and forth feel that the match had as well gave it almost like a sort of like a really competitive streak to it. It had a nice eerie vibe to it, thanks to the two characters involved as well. And it was quite physical as well. You know, we see Undertaker returning after a year, and generally speaking, you know, he didn't really slow down on this one. He got back to you know, a nice little flow, and he didn't really seem to slow down too much after you know, the previous year. So I think it wasn't a bad return for Undertaker, to be fair. I thought it was pretty good in that sense. Bray Wyatt looked solid as well. Thought he, you know, lived up to the challenge of the Undertaker quite nicely. Obviously, you know, him losing only once prior to this one on the WrestleMania stage, he's still, you know, very much revered on this grand stage. So yeah, I think you know, Bray showed that he, you know, he wasn't fearing Undertaker at all. You know, he is the new face of fear, as he was claiming beforehand, and I think he did a good job of living up to that moniker as well. I think he sort of like went toe to toe in a really strange sort of eerily vibey way with the Undertaker. So yeah, I liked it for what it was worth. We see in the end Undertaker countering his sister Abigail by shoving Wyatt to the corner. He sort of uses Wyatt's own momentum. He sort of runs back at Undertaker. He lifts him up for his second Tombstone Piledriver of the matchup, and he hits that in order to get the victory. So yeah, it did take two tombstones in the end, both men kicking out of each other's big finishing move. One Sister Abigail kicked out of by Undertaker, and obviously a Tombstone Piledriver kicked out of by Bray Wyatt. Yeah, it had some nice tense moments too, and you know, the crowd were invested as well. I say that the crowd, generally speaking, was just really hot for this WrestleMania. I think in most of the matches I've mentioned them, so yeah, they definitely had a large part to say throughout this one. They seemed to really enjoy the show. So yeah, it was yeah, I like this contest. I thought it was fun. It wasn't like the all-time best match of Undertaker on the WrestleMania stage. It wasn't close to that, but it was good. It was solid, and it showcased Bray Wyatt in a way that, you know, I think it was very much believable. You know, his sort of creepy weirdness, I guess you could say, just sort of like matched really well with someone like the Undertaker, who's obviously one of those, you know, just iconic characters. And I think for Bray to sort of like stand out in his own way against someone like the Dead Man in the ring, I think he's doing something right, and that sort of showed that in this match. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I just liked it. I thought it worked really well, and it did a lot of good things here. What did you think though, Nick? You know, the first match since Taker's loss to Brock Lesnar the year before. You know, maybe, you know, in his last his last few appearances we're getting towards now. He is starting to slow down, but what do you think of him physically in this matchup?
Yeah, a few talking points for me. The Start with the positives. I think the positives being that Bray Wyatt over the last two manias has been pitted up against John Cena and Undertaker, so clearly being held in high regard. Obviously, I kind of expressed my displeasure for Cena beating him last year. I felt like that was an opportunity to make a big star, kind of similar to what Cena, you know, did this year. Um, but alas, you know, bringing him back for Undertaker coming back for him, kind of the battle of for the face of fear. I felt like, well, I do feel like Undertaker was a bit slower this year, naturally speaking. And I think due to that, I think this match does suffer a bit, just in kind of the grand scheme of things and the flow of which it goes. But apparently, Bray Wyatt was also injured. He got injured during the rehearsal. So, maybe it's more impressive than it should be. Um, but yeah, I think this match was a cool moment. Kind of seeing the spooky crawl, going up against Undertaker's kind of rising up bit. I thought that was a cool moment as well. Um, but yeah, as you kind of alluded to, definitely far from Taker's best performances. I think more of a cool match idea than it was an actual great match. Um, but still a consistent kind of showing here, I think, at least, especially considering Taker hadn't been in the ring for a year. So all things considered, I think it was good. Definitely just not his best, and just had me kind of thinking like this would be a perfect opportunity if Taker decided this was going to be his last match, or even if it wasn't. You had already kind of got the big moniker of the first loss off. I felt like this was an opportunity to kind of pass that torch, like the spooky gimmick torch, um, to maybe that of Bray Wyatt by letting him get a win here. But maybe I dwell on those too much. But regardless, just felt like that was an opportunity there. It did feel like just genuinely the vibe around Undertaker had taken an impact. Obviously, you have the 21-1 now as opposed to what could have been 22-0. So interesting, interesting there. Um, but in terms of the match, it was good. Just felt like maybe the outcome could have been a bit different, but regardless, a strong spot and a strong statement from Bray Wyatt being in match with those two kind of icons back year to year. So with that, a rating for me, a 7 out of 10. Good. Just not great, and definitely not the levels of Undertaker that we were used to seeing just a couple of years ago. So with that, getting into the main event, which has a Roman Reigns going up against Brock Lesnar for the World Heavyweight Championship. Kind of alluded to this a bit earlier. This match was scheduled to go 10 minutes longer, but because of that segment with The Rock and Rousey, did get some time trimmed from it. So not a single match on the card over 20 minutes. So an interesting stat there. It is truly amazing how things can change so quickly. A year ago, Brock is public enemy number one, obviously taking the streak of Undertaker, giving him his first loss, to now seemingly being the hero in this match, which obviously is not meant to be. The boos that rain down on Roman after seemingly every move he makes. I think we all remember Roman not being liked and being forced down our throats to an extent. But I personally, and I don't have the best memory, and I think that's apparent a lot of times. But I don't remember him being, I don't remember this level of hatred. So I thought that was a bit eye opening and a reminder of exactly how much WWE Universe was not a fan of Roman here. So it's an interesting bit there, and yeah, interesting match here, KP. What do you make of it? I think in terms of moments, try to separate, the match from what it becomes at the end, but kind of leading up to it, kind of treating those separately. But regardless, just kind of get your thoughts here on the match as a whole, and of course, that moment at the end obviously is a very big talking point as well.
Well, to put it bluntly, I'm glad that things overran earlier in the night, so that we got 10 minutes less of this because they didn't need 10 minutes more. Like, what would have been the point? We saw in the time that we saw in this matchup, Roman getting absolutely dominated for as long as he was. What would they have accomplished with another 10 minutes? It didn't really need it. So I honestly am glad the way it went in that sense because up until the moment that I'll talk about in a minute, um, Brock just played with his food. He was absolutely toying with Reigns for the most part. Roman offered basically very little until Lesnar actually got busted open via the ring post, and yeah, once before that had happened, it was just a mutilation by Brock Lesnar. Basically, it was just suplex after suplex after suplex, just utter domination from the Beast, and Roman had nothing. There were a couple of moments here and there where he showed some defiance. He was sort of like smiling and like laughing to himself. yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was, something that they discussed beforehand or if it was just in the moment sort of reaction from Reigns. But yeah, I don't know. It just felt really slow and dull. Like, yeah, okay, he was absolutely destroying him. He could have ended that match. Well, I guess he tried, to be fair. He pinned, he did go for a cover on a couple of occasions, and Roman did kick out quite defiantly. So I guess maybe he couldn't put him away. But I guess if he just hit F5 after F5 after F5, maybe it would have been a bit different. But yeah, regarding that sort of like general flow, it didn't really do anything for me. That's not the match that I tend to like. These very sort of one-sided physical sort of dominant performances. That doesn't interest me at all, really. Even when Roman was fighting back and stuff. I think that was like too late to really warrant any sort of just hope in the match to get better, sort of thing. And yeah, Seth saved the whole damn thing, in my opinion. We see Lesnar getting busted open, and once that does eventually happen, we then see Roman Reigns attempt to get back on, back into sort of like some control of the contest. And he does actually hit a spear in the end and does go for a cover on Lesnar, kicks out at 2. And as Roman looks for another one, trying to stay on the offensive, he gets caught by an F5, almost seemingly out of nothing. Brock and Roman are down in the middle of the ring, and then we get that iconic, just play of Seth's music. He absolutely charges down the ramp. The camera sort of like follow him down, and then we see him cashing in his contract. Deals with Roman Reigns, heads about the ring, delivers a stomp to Lesnar, looks to deal a second one, and Lesnar catches him, looks for an F5 on Seth Rollins. Then we see Roman Reigns coming on into the ring, and he actually spears Lesnar, who drops Seth Rollins, down as a result of that. Roman's sort of like caught up in the he's even battered and bruised anyway, but that took a lot out of him, that spear. And Seth delivers a stomp to Roman Reigns, and that'll be enough for him to win that WWE World Championship at the end of the matchup. So it was a fantastic cash in. It's probably the best cash in, in wrestling, in my opinion. I think there are a couple that people do sort of like consider to be maybe rivals to this one, but for me personally, this is the greatest Money in the Bank cash in of all time. It's just absolutely brilliant. The finish itself was fantastic as well. It's just one of those iconic moments. Everyone looks back on this, and they look to this moment, and it's one of probably Seth's greatest moments of his career. And there's a very good reason why, because it was brilliant, to put it bluntly. In terms of how I rated this one, so I have decided to base it on the matchup, including the cash in. So it's a mix between both, because technically it was the match that turned into a triple threat. So I guess it became something a little bigger, and that's a good thing for the original match, because I don't know what I would have given it before the cash in, but it ended up coming out as a 7.5. The rating was absolutely boosted and benefited by that of the cash in. If it wasn't for that, I don't know what I would have given it. It would have been extremely low. But yeah, it was dull, dry, and boring up until Seth cashed in, and then it became, what an absolutely incredible moment. So yeah, the crowd were hilarious as well. Like you said, booing Roman Reigns, giving him crap for the whole contest, and cheering Lesnar was something interesting for sure. So I do look back, and I do agree that Roman was shoved down our throats for a long period of time, and it wasn't until in real life now, about a few years ago, where he actually did sort of like get into a decent position. So yeah, I don't know, it's one of those things. But this Roman wasn't something that we were vibing with at the time. There was a pretty good reason for that. It just wasn't doing anything for us. So yeah, 7.5. I think that's completely fair based on what we saw here. It was a tale of two stories here, I guess you could say, and the latter being the better 100%. What did you make of this one then, Nick? Obviously, everything involved, all the stuff going down, the one-sidedness, the cash-in, the moment, the iconicness, and yeah, Lesnar against Reigns turning into a triple threat.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say the latter half of this match, kind of calling it all the same, with that triple threat, from the cash in from Seth, definitely was the best part of the match. And obviously the moment, iconic, as you've already kind of glossed over as well. I didn't hate the match, seemingly, near as much as you. I actually thought it was pretty decent. Of course, at this point, Brock kind of has his formula, one that you and I have kind of grown to dislike quite a bit. But for whatever reason, I it didn't feel like it was super forced. I felt like there was at least a story being told here. Obviously, Brock having come off that kind of annihilation of Cena, which we were reminded of this past year, not too long before this. Kind of just continuing the year that Brock Lesnar was having. Yeah, Roman just didn't seem. It is crazy how booed Roman was just based on the fact that he didn't really get in a ton of offense, but they really did make Brock out to be this beast, and he was taking out the likes of these people like Undertaker, like Cena, now Roman, the biggest that the company has to offer, throwing him at him, and Brock seemingly not caring, kind of taking them out as they come in. So it truly is very, very fascinating how much booed, how much Roman is booed, considering the amount of offense he does actually get in here. But the story was great. Paul Heyman selling, on the sideline, doing what he does best. Some pretty gnarly shots in this match too, which becomes standard for Brock matches, obviously. But Roman laughing after getting hit by said gnarly shot was entertaining as well. And maybe I'm being dramatic here, but I do feel like the finisher era, which I kind of call uh, around this point, where kind of coincides with Roman being the top dog and obviously Brock being heavily utilized here. It feels like just finishers start kind of diminishing around this time. They have moments where they're better today, but still definitely have moments where they are used more often than they should. And for me, it feels like this is kind of the time period where that starts to happen. It's happened before this, but really starts ramping up here where finishers just kind of are diminished a bit. But yeah, then obviously the moment, Seth cashing in, swinging the belt at the top of the ramp. Obviously, that was all great as well. Yeah, I would think I'd have to agree with you. Probably the best cash in, at least that I can recall off the top of my head. The first big one, on the Mania stage, the heist of the century, as it was dubbed. Um, that moment of Seth swinging the belt just lives rent free, I think, in most of our heads, anyways. But yeah, overall, I think I give this a great main event. It is one that I like quite a bit, and just I thought it told a great story, and of course, just the iconic kind of moment of the cash in. So, the variance in our rating, which doesn't happen often, but I did give this one a 9 out of 10. Was my favorite kind of match slash moment, whatever you want to call it. It is hard to separate them sometimes, but just based on what we got, bell to bell, I gave this one a 9 out of 10. So, with that, WrestleMania 31, KP, give us your overall rating here, your kind of highs and lows, and we'll get this one wrapped up.
First and foremost, I want to just quickly say I think this is probably the furthest we've been in our ratings in any of these. I think, like across the course of the entire show. Yeah, some really big differences from us, which is it doesn't happen too often, so that's quite refreshing actually. I quite like that. Got some reactions out of me as we were going along there. This WrestleMania I think is extremely underrated. I really, really do. I think it's got some really great moments throughout the whole show. We kicked off obviously with a very great ladder match, Intercontinental Championship on the line. Daniel Bryan having another big moment on the WrestleMania stage. That one was a personal highlight for me across the course of the night. We see obviously, the most one of the most iconic cash-ins of all time in the main event, courtesy of Seth Rollins. So yeah, was loving that from him. Just a great way to end the show, sends everybody away on a high. So yeah, started off, ended really, really well. And for me personally, I know you didn't really, agree too much with this, but Triple H and Sting, I thought it was a really fun battle between, two groups and two icons, I guess you could say. So yeah, I think there were some really nice matches throughout this card. The lowest one I've got really here is the women's tag. So yeah, I mean, that wasn't a bad match. So, by that logic, WrestleMania 31 didn't have any bad matches in as far as I'm concerned. So it's up there with one of my favorite ones so far. And that reflects on my overall because it's the first one that's got an 8 out of 10 from me. So as an average of all of my matches put together, with a very, very small rounding there, it's like 7.9 something it came to. So yeah, 8 out of 10 from me. Yeah, I just loved this WrestleMania. It was really, really good. There wasn't really anything bad that happened, like for the most part. So, yeah, I just yeah had a great time watching it. I thought it was great, just absolutely solid from start to finish. Really good moments, and yeah, some highs for sure. No, not many lows. Really, not many at all. But Nick, yeah, what are you thinking for WrestleMania 31? Your overall thoughts, your rating, your highs, your lows. And sorry, my match of the night is going to be the Intercontinental Championship match at the start of the night. That's going to be my match of the night. What was your match of the night as well, involved in all of your review?
Yeah, comparatively speaking, kind of what we do in every single Mania before it, the 30 that have come, um, it always feels like there's at least one, if not two, sometimes even more, matches that really bog down the rating. For this Mania, I don't really feel like that is the case. Obviously, my lowest ratings would be the actually the Triple H and Sting match, which we've already kind of hit on. We disagreed on that. I think I agree it does make for a better conversation. But yeah, the lows definitely much better than lows of almost all manias that have come before. So I think that does kind of help boost it in the right direction in terms of overall ratings. In terms of overall rating for me, I gave it a 7.5, which probably based on the ranting I did throughout this episode, it probably does feel a bit high. But again, I think maybe just nitpicking at things here. I think really, I think the biggest kind of takeaway for me were just some interesting booking decisions. I think the Triple H thing one being obviously one of those. The tag women's match I think could have been longer and or could have been a separate match with the Divas title actually being defended, but that's really nothing new on the Mania stage. John Cena over Rusev, I thought that was an interesting choice as well. Bray Wyatt, Undertaker, not definitely not the best, but then the main event obviously was for me the highlight of the match of the night. For me, you just can't take away that Seth Rollins cash in. I think even for people that don't, are very casual or maybe don't even know about wrestling, have seen that kind of moment of Seth swinging the belt at the top of the ramp. Just truly an iconic moment. But yeah, 7.5 overall for me, which is definitely one of the highest. I think. Funny enough, I think 30 and 31 um, are two of the highest. I think there are very few that come close to the ratings of these last two manias. So definitely in a good spot, and a nice little trend here. Seeing if we can continue that with WrestleMania 32. But yeah, overall, a pretty fun WrestleMania in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, hoping to continue that direction with 32. But for now, 31. Let us know what your thoughts were on it. What was your highlights of the night? What were your kind of lows of the night? Curious to hear from you below, and of course, would love to get an overall rating. From you as well. Any feedback is greatly appreciated, and of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that does help us out tremendously. But until next time, this has been the Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.